All right, well, we have returned to open session. Let me go back to the agenda. All right, at this time, is there any public comment? Yes.
Well, hello. Nice to see you all again. My name is Kim Eddy, and I am a teacher at Hollywood School. I teach the Advanced Learning Math program at Hollywood School, and I'm also a parent of two Hollywood students, 3rd grade and 5th grade. So I just wanted to contribute some of my personal thoughts on the multipurpose room at Hollywood School, and I hope you don't mind if I read something that I've written. I also wanted to say I know that this is something you've already given very much consideration to, and I really appreciate that. So the multipurpose room is something that I believe is necessary to alleviate space issues at Hollywood School. I'm fortunate to be currently working, sharing a conference room space with the other advanced learning teacher to hold my math groups. I feel strongly that my students need this consistent environment to learn so that they can have easy access to our classroom materials and refer to charts and graphs that are on the walls. Previous to working in this conference room space, which is the only conference room we currently have at Hollywood, Mrs. Dykes and I shared a smaller space, which meant that if my group size, which does fluctuate throughout the year, if it got large enough, I was sometimes borrowing other spaces to teach my math groups, like kindergarten classroom or the library when it was available. So I'm very appreciative to have the consistent use this year of the conference room. Unfortunately, this often leaves other teachers, students, and parents who would normally use the conference space for various reasons, struggling to find other places to meet. I imagine this is going to become an even greater issue when we return to a normal school year and people are meeting in person in larger groups more regularly again. As a parent, I want my children to have reasonable space to meet for band and orchestra, a space to have indoor recess when necessary, a space to learn in small groups other than the hallway, and a school space that they take pride in. The conflicts with band and orchestra, having lunch and gym in the same place, the lack of small group instruction space, and various other complications could be alleviated by the addition of a multipurpose room. So I just ask that you approve the project that the parent community has been patiently awaiting, the Hollywood staff feel the necessity for on a daily basis, and the Hollywood students deserve. And I just want to thank you all for all of your consideration and all that you do. And just wanted to also say, Mr. Miller, I know that you're wrapping up your time on the board, and I just wanted to personally thank you for your dedication to District 96.
Thanks very much, Ms. Mazzetti. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And I understand we have 2 emails for public comment as well. All right, let's see. So the first one is from Stacy Doyle. It reads, as the board is aware, there is legislation going through the process in Illinois to require schools to test for dyslexia starting next year. This is HB 3324. We believe this will make great strides in supporting a student population that is estimated to be 10 to 20% of the whole. But identification is only the first step. Up-to-date training, empathy, and adequate instruction support must follow. As parents of a child diagnosed with dyslexia, excuse me, hearing about HB 3324 was music to our ears, as our child was very fortunate in that he was diagnosed early after issues were noted by a very perceptive and caring teacher. Additionally, the school that our child attended at the time was very tuned in to helping identify and support students with dyslexia. We were able to adjust his learning plan by 2nd grade, and he received dyslexic-specific instruction through the Scottish Rite Take Flight program that has been adopted by the school, not just standard reading intervention, for 1.5 years until we moved to Riverside. At that point, he had become a proficient reader, i.e. decoder of words, but still struggled with the comprehension behind that reading. Because the school was already on top of the instructional needs and changes, we only put in place a 504, not an IEP, to get our child the support he required. Prior to our move to Riverside in 2016, we reached out to D96 School District and were assured that dyslexic students were cared for in the curriculum here. Once enrolled, we witnessed our child test in and out of reading interventions repeatedly, testing out when his scores peaked at the 15th percentile. However, we were not always notified when the reading interventions were stopped. We witnessed our child continue to struggle and become more and more disenfranchised from his own education. We met about 504s and had accommodations in place, but the instructional interventions were not meeting the needs. It was at that time in 5th grade when we felt like we were at a crossroads and we needed something more formal in place. We requested an IEP for dyslexia. We went through the entire and lengthy process to be told by the school principal that he didn't believe the dyslexia diagnosis was still valid. When asked if the school could make an evaluation or diagnosis themselves, we were told that the school doesn't test for dyslexia. When asked if we could pay for an outside testing with a neuropsychologist, we were told that the school didn't have to take those test results as fact. It became clear that the school was not interested in working with us to support the needs of our child with a dyslexia diagnosis. We then shifted to understanding if there was any expertise in any dyslexia-specific instructional programming in the school. Take Flight, Wilson Method, Barton, Orton, Gillingham. We were told that there wasn't. It was also clear that his teachers along the way had very little understanding of the needs of a dyslexic student. We asked if we could incorporate a dyslexic-specific tutor into our child's school day in place of the reading intervention pullout that we would pay for, and we were told that there would be an insurance liability issue with that and it couldn't be accommodated. In the end, our child worked with an outside tutor after school hours paid for by ourselves. This story is not told to earn stripes or sympathy. It is to highlight that there are failure points around dyslexia in D96. Failure points around identification, teachers being able to see it and administrators being willing to accept it, failures around instructional opportunities, and failures around empathy for our students and families. While we were excited about HB 3324, it occurred to us, why does our school district and our community require legislation? Regardless of whether this bill passes into law, we should be doing better by these students. We ask that the board take up this topic and invest in these students and in testing, programming for, and supporting them. We are happy to support this effort and share our experience with our previous school district and what we have learned as parents. There are some innovative ways to build understanding and empathy that can be employed. Thank you for your time and consideration on this matter. Joe and Stacy Doyle. Okay, the next one is from Kari Huffman. Okay, it says, hello, Board of Education members. I am writing to find out the status on the facility projects for Hollywood School. The two projects that I believe were approved last school year were the playground update and the addition of a multipurpose room. After listening in on the board meeting last week, it sounds like plans are moving forward for the playground. However, some members were hesitant to spend the amount needed to build the playground the architects had planned. What was decided on this? When will construction begin? I don't know if you had any further discussions regarding Hollywood multipurpose room addition, but I do think it was an improved project as of last year. Is that still part of the facilities plan? I certainly hope so, and here's why. Hollywood needs the space for group meetings and class combined experiences. With the potential of going back to school day in the fall, we need all the space that we can get to space the kids out as much as possible. With advanced learning in the conference room, we have no current space for orchestra. We could use the library, but the other schools have been unwilling to give Hollywood different times for orchestra or library, so we've always had them in the same place. With the addition of an NPR, we would have the additional space needed. We really need 2 spaces for gym and lunch. It is not sanitary to eat and exercise in the same space. Having indoor recess in the same space as lunch, and in fact during lunch, is really unacceptable. It is extremely loud and not to mention unsanitary. Please let me know the status of both projects. I really appreciate your update. I know both these projects are extremely important to the many parents and students at Hollywood School. Thank you, Kari Huffman. All right, were there any additional public comments?
There was not, with Carrie Huffman, she did have one that was dated April 21st. It's a little shorter, and it should be a little bit below that strand.
Okay.
It starts, Mr. Hunt, I am following up on my email I sent back in February.
Okay. I am following up on my email I sent back in February. My primary reason for follow-up is the potential Hollywood NPR. Your mention in your response below that the potential Hollywood projects, including the NPR, are dependent upon how the new bids look in comparison to the previously approved budget. What is the previously approved budget for the NPR project? What did the new bids come in at? Is this decision being put to a vote tonight? I apologize if all of this is somewhere I should have already seen it. I outlined my reasons below that explain why Hollywood School definitely requires an NPR. I hope the board considers all these reasons when making this very important vote. Thank you for your time, Kari Huffman. Okay. All right. So at this time, are there any board member proposed changes to the agenda?
No.
Okay. Then that moves us to the superintendent's report.
All right, thanks, Dan. So I have just a brief update for everybody on our increased in-person learning time. As you all know, it was just last Monday where we extended a full day for our elementary students that were interested in coming back full-time. And we have, I believe in our memo, it's 600 and, we have 683 students attending across the 4 elementary schools now for in-person learning. So I did share the enrollment by grade level and by school there for all of you. I've also shared the information about the number of students staying for lunch. I know that was something that was of great interest to everybody. Right now we have 16 students staying at Ames, and at Blythe Park, 12 to 14 students depending on the day. At Central, 15 to 18 students, and Hollywood, 3 to 7 students. I just really want to thank the community for that. That was something that, as you know, even though I believe we absolutely have safe ways for children to eat lunch in school, it was something that felt very daunting to our lunch supervisors, and just something that certainly would create some strain on our physical space availabilities without necessarily being able to use the outdoors as much as possible. So anyway, it's that has turned out to not be our most significant issue. We're glad to report, and again, just very appreciative of everyone's flexibility. I will tell you, the first week back, and I think probably all the teachers would say the same, it just felt like there were a lot of children back in the building as there were. It was a little bit of a, surprise, I think, for everybody. Not that we didn't anticipate it, but just felt so very different than how it had felt all year. Walking through the schools, even just earlier this week, it starts to feel very normal. Again, really quite quickly, I drove by Central, and there were so many cars right out there dropping children off just a little before 1 o'clock, and I thought, oh my goodness, it just felt like this is how it has been in the past. So again, I think that teachers are becoming kind of quickly familiar with the old routines, which are now new routines, but becoming familiar again. And again, I would say that it's going very well here in our second week. So we're looking forward to being able to end the school year this way, and certainly looking forward to being able to start the new school year, again, with the virus cooperating certainly, but very hopeful about that direction. So that's going well, and I just wanted to share that. I also shared an update, as I really have, I think, every board meeting, an update on our saliva screening. Continues to be an interesting area, really still encouraging families to participate. I know I've received a few consent forms of families that had been remote and are now in person, and we're kind of quick to say we do want to participate in that. So you have that data. I wanted to share with all of you. I don't know if there are any particular questions about that. It's something we've talked about quite a bit. The other thing I have, kind of shifting gears altogether, as you know, with all the construction that was done at our schools, we were never able to have a ribbon cutting ceremony. We just didn't feel that we were able to do it in a way that was safe with our social distancing and COVID mitigations. But one of the things I had wanted to present, I think Kathy said it was time to bring it and maybe get it off her desk. I wanted to share this with all of you because this is something we found during construction. And it's actually a letter from Mrs. Ames to the Board of Education, thanking the Board of Education for naming Ames School after what at that point now had become her late husband. So anyway, just a very touching letter to the family of Albert F. Ames. Deeply appreciates and gratefully acknowledges the token of esteem to the memory of their beloved and faithful superintendent, and expressed in the resolution ordered by the Board of Education, a copy of which beautifully engraved, I believe, and signed by the president and members of the board has been delivered to them. So there is a post date from 1931. So we had that frame. We'll make sure that it finds a place here at Ames School, and just thought it was, I think Bill Radke, our Director of Buildings and Grounds, found it in a box in the maintenance garage. He goes, "Do you think you want this?" And I said, "Yeah, I think we do want that." So anyway, it was just kind of funny how things turn up, and just, again, reminds us of the significance and the history of our school district. So that was kind of a fun find, and something that we will make sure hangs at Ames, and at some point we will have, I think, a ribbon cutting or celebration of our new facilities, which won't be so new by the time we're able to do that.
You know the story about how Ames himself found out about that, don't you?
What was it?
Do you know the story about how Ames found out that it was going to be named after him?
No, I don't think I.
Well, I guess he was sitting in the office. It was Central at that point, and it was 1923, I guess. And a guy pulled up with a load of bricks and came into his office, and he said, "Can you direct me to the Ames School?" Which they were then building at the time. So he didn't know at that time that it was named that, but I guess the board had already decided that. So it's gonna.
That's fantastic.
There's a lot of history here. So anyway, I love that one. So also, we have not had our student presenters here this year, as you know, again, because of social distancing and just capacity issues, so something we really missed. But just earlier today, I got a letter from Caitlin Stabe, who's one of our special education teachers who works very hard with our Special Olympics program. And the Special Olympics program at Hauser School, they were named the Cool School Champion Plunger. So the Polar Plunge is a fundraising activity that Special Olympics does every sort of late winter when it's not quite yet spring, and often they go and plunge in I think a pond in the Oak Brook area, right, Pam? But this year they did a dunk tank at Hauser School. I know it was something I popped in to see. It was not a warm day, it was a sunny day, so I think for early March it felt pretty good, but there were a good number of our staff members that were dunked in a dunk tank of very cold water to raise money for Special Olympics, and they were acknowledged for those efforts. So there's some fun pictures, and I attached those in board book also, but again, just a really spirited event, and one of those times where it's like, here we are in the midst of the pandemic, and families and children and our staff still finding ways to celebrate. So that was great. The other thing that was there a comment about that?
No.
Okay.
It's great. I saw that when it was happening, so
Yeah.
yes, it was not.
It was not warm. Yeah. I would not have done that. The other thing, today we had our annual safety meeting, and we had 25 of us on a Zoom screen. It was our police and fire officials from Riverside, North Riverside, and Brookfield. So again, trying to continue on with some of these very important and normal activities even during a pandemic, and it was just a nice opportunity to connect and talk about school safety and talk about the shared work we do in terms of supporting students and families in our community. So that was just today, and pleased that we were able to do that. And always appreciative of our partnerships with fire and police and with the 3 villages. So that is my superintendent's report, Dan.
All right. Thank you very much, Martha. Apparently we did have one more public comment.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that is great, yes.
Yeah.
Alluding to that, that
Yeah.
is great. That's
Yeah.
amazing that survived all these many years instead of boxing.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Before we move on, can I just make a comment? About
Absolutely.
The saliva screening. I noticed that the numbers keep dropping for participation. I just sort of like to make a plea to the community. I mean, if people have been following the news and what have you, the number of cases among kids that's the increasing. It's the younger population that's now taking up the majority of cases. And I think it's an imperative that, the district, we're offering this to the community. I think it's imperative that the parents take advantage of this, because the kids are now, it's no longer the 80-plus-year-old or 70-plus-year-olds, it's the kids that are most at risk now. And it's showing in the numbers and in the hospitalization rates. So I would just ask the community to like, look at this a little bit closer and participate. I mean, we all need to get through this, and we want to open schools next year. And we won't be able to do that like we'd like to if this numbers don't go down.
I completely agree with what David said.
David, definitely thank you for bringing that up. It's definitely good to repeat that again.
Absolutely. And I'll send out another reminder tomorrow because I have a parent communication ready to go out, and I will continue to link the consent form and encourage people to participate. I know our principals are doing the same. I think even just, neighbors and, talking to other parents in the community, I think you're absolutely right that there are a lot of concern right now about, younger population.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Could the board secretary read the contents of tonight's consent agenda?
The consent agenda for tonight consists of meeting minutes from prior sessions, closed session March 3rd, 2021, committee of the whole meeting March 3rd, 2021, closed session March 17th, 2021, regular business meeting March 17th, 2021, the personnel report as presented, payables pre-list as of March 31st, 2021, and April 21st, 2021.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion that the Board of Education approve tonight's consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion, or are we removing any? No. Okay, let's see. Kathy, can you call the roll?
Okay, Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy? Aye. Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Mrs. Kleiber? Aye. Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
And Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, the next item is the approval of administrative contracts, excuse me. Is there a motion the Board of Education approve the administrator's contracts as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Kathy, can you call the roll?
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy? Aye. Mr. Marhold?
Aye.
Mrs. Kleiber? Aye. Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, next item is the Riverside Education Council. Any representatives from the REC here tonight? All right, and next.
Dan, can I back us up briefly?
Absolutely.
Usually when we approve the contracts, we do summarize what the salary increases are.
Okay. All right, absolutely.
I'll be honest, I don't have that number in front of me, and if Jim, I'm going to arbitrarily pick on you that you may have that.
Yeah, I just have the contracts themselves. I don't have.
Wasn't it 3% except for 2 individuals? I think it was 3%.
I believe you're correct, Jeff.
Yeah.
Except for
I think it was April.
Ms. May got 4%.
I think she was the only one.
And that was the only one
I
that
think
was.
so.
So, in general, overall, the administrators received a 3% increase, with the exception of Miss May, who received 4%.
All right. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, and the next item on the agenda is board member comments. Any board member comments this evening?
I'll just say, when as a parent who's getting used to the new all day, and I do appreciate, I just want to give props to the other parents that have really made an effort, like Martha said, to go and to drop off at lunch and to be back again and again. And the kids have done really well just being patient and waiting. And all of them really excited and running with the lesser backpack that's not piled with things. So I'm hopeful that we can make some gains, and I know that, whether it's the director of teaching and learning, Angela, or the teachers or the parents, we're all hoping for gains. So I want to thank everyone for the adjustment yet again, because we pivoted so many times. But do what you got to do to make gains. But it's been okay. So.
It's definitely been a big pivot and a big change, but I think a very good one, very positive one for the students. I'm a parent of a kindergartner myself, and while the school day has not changed much for kindergarten classes, I think I was hearing rave reports from my son today about how his class now has pet worms, which and there were pictures of the pet worms as well. So all in all, it seemed like a big step back towards normal. We're not quite there yet. We're not ready to be there yet, but we're definitely getting there. And I think the students' families are definitely very appreciative of that.
Dan, looking at the numbers we have, it looks like about 80% of our children are back in school. I know talking to some of them that they are very much enjoying that experience and really desire to be with their peers. And also I know that it did require extra effort on the part of our teachers, and we appreciate that. We know that transitions aren't always easy. I personally believe that it's better to make this transition as much as we can now, with the hopes that beginning the new school year next fall will be much easier and much more normal. And of course, that is dependent on where the virus takes us.
I completely agree.
Oh, sorry,
I
go
think
ahead.
that also is where I know we're focusing on in-person learners here too, but I know there are remote learners out there whose families are pivoting as well and making some changes. So I just wanted to, make sure we extend that acknowledgement to everybody, everybody involved, parents, teachers, staff, administrators. This has been a heavy load for everybody, and it's greatly appreciated.
No, absolutely. It's not like 1%, it's a significant chunk.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right.
All right. Then that brings us to committee reports. The first committee listed tonight is the Personnel Committee.
No topics for tonight.
Okay. Next is the Policy Committee.
No topics.
All right, which brings us to Facilities.
There's no topics for tonight. No, I'm just kidding. just trying to lighten it a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, Joel, I'll let you talk.
I was all ready too.
Right.
My thunder is gone. The facilities met last week, as we will hear shortly. Most of our discussion was around the bids and potential for Central and Hollywood. But we are looking forward to seeing what the priorities of the strategic plan are and continuing to evaluate our future plans and where improvements can be made.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Next then is the Education Committee.
Yeah, based on, what Martha's already talked about, obviously staff and families are busy with the in-person adjustment, but, there will be some standardized assessments coming up, which Angela's already spoken to, so they'll be thinking about how we assess what is currently happening with our students and how we adjust and make gains, so be on the lookout for that. But also, we'll be talking about a Hauser start time change, just based on what has worked well through pandemic and what works well for children that we've seen and as research staff, so be listening for that. And also our school calendar, of course, is that time of year. I've tried to hopefully reassure the others that it feels normal to me as a parent. Hopefully it'll feel not so different for the other families when they take a look at it. So that's about it for now.
All right. Thank you, Sherry. And finally, that brings us to the Finance Committee.
Yeah, nothing to report right now.
You don't want to do one last.
I could.
It would have been great if you pulled out like a.
Where's your chart? Yeah.
Okay, then that brings us to old business. The first item under old business is the Central Sprinkler Replacement Project bids approval. Let's see, at this time, is there a motion the Board of Education approve the replacement of the sprinkler system at Central School per the contracts document developed by DLA Architects and publicly bid on March 22nd, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right.
Let's have some discussion though.
Should we ask Ramesh to
Yeah.
briefly present?
Mm-hmm.
So we publicly bid the projects out on March 22nd and had a pre-bid meeting with the contractors on March 26th and opened bids and read them out publicly on April 7th of this month. Now, the important thing to remember out here was this project was set up by a life safety issue, and we have to do this project. And there was a chance that the numbers would be really high because of the complexity of the project, the timing that it's required to be completed in. And I think we did really, really well in our bids. I mean, if you look at the numbers, prior to the bids, I had done a cost estimate for the project, and we had looked at approximately $1.4 million as the budget for the project. And we have received a number substantially lower than that. And after reviewing the numbers with the contractor, DLA and Vistara feel very confident that we've got the right contractor. And I would also like to point out that the number that's being asked for approval includes an additional allowance of $100,000, which allows us to look at unforeseen issues. The schedule is going to be extremely challenging from the fact that we can start construction only after school closes. But the point is that once we get approved today, our intention is to get into the pre-construction mode right away and have them put the drawings together for the building permits that we are required and to start pre-ordering the long lead time items. I would like to point out that we are in an extremely challenging construction mode at this time. If you're aware, if you've seen the papers, you can see that everyone's talking about an infrastructure bill. And because of that, there's been a lot of uppricing that's been taking place in numbers. Many of our other public bids, we've seen numbers skyrocket, especially on items like steel, copper, piping, lumber. And in this case, we've really done very well in keeping our number below our budget, number one. And number two, in getting a contractor who is willing to work with us and who has experience doing schoolwork. And I believe DLA and Vistara feel very strongly that this is the right contractor for the project.
So just to explicitly state, the projected budget was 1.4 million, and
Correct.
this bid came in at 1,050,000.
That is correct.
Just want to make sure that's, so that is, and that 1,050,000 includes the 100,000
That is correct.
contingency. Okay.
So it's actually 950, and so if the 100,000 is not used, we get the remainder of it back.
Can you reiterate the contingencies that you're considering?
So when we take, so most of the pipes are above the ceiling. So you have to dismantle the ceiling. And we also know that there's lead paint on the walls.
Right.
So we've actually talked to the contractor about reusing the openings in the existing openings when they put the new pipes through.
Right.
But there are many instances because of new code changes that require new pipes in new locations, which mean new penetrations. We cannot say which ones at this time. So that's why we needed that contingency.
Right, so I'm just checking, because it's really what we talked about before, which is, if we have to leave them open, we will, if it's necessary, but it's similar to what we talked about before then with the lead paint, so.
That is correct.
Gotcha, I just was
Yeah.
saying if there anything new or.
No,
That's
we
pretty much
haven't
the same.
opened up any of the ceilings yet because
Right,
classes are
because
on
and you
session.
never know what you're gonna find up there, but.
Correct.
Right, thank
And
you.
we've also engaged environmental consultant who will be helping us and who's on call all the time in case we need to do some testing.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions about that? Or
I had one question, and I do remember originally when we started talking about this, I think the idea of it was around $1 million, and then it was increased, the budget was increased to 1.4. I'm definitely happy to see it come down to roughly around $1 million, a little over. I'm just wondering, I'm wondering how we jumped there and back, I guess. Is that, what were we considering, or what was the main concerns that increased it to, the estimate to 1.4, and we lucked out and got back to round one?
There are two key elements. The first one is timing and schedule. We anticipated a lot more overtime. So when we questioned the low bidder in this case, we talked to them about it as to how many crews are they going to bring onto the job. They said they'll have 3 full crews. And if they feel they're falling behind, they'll start working on Saturdays too. And we know that in union contracts, a Saturday is a 50% premium. So that is number one that we had to take into account. Second thing is commodity pricing. Pipes have gone up in price, they've doubled. And since we started the project, it's gone up almost 80%. So we felt that there's a good chance that the bids that are received will reflect that. But we've lucked out in the sense that sprinkler piping is fairly standard. The sizes, the Schedule 40 and Schedule 80 that are used are very standard pipes. And luckily, I guess our contractors found a good stock because we see the other numbers in the bids, they're substantially higher. Okay, so it looks like this contractor got a good load. I mean, he found a good subcontractor and the pricing was very much in our favor. If we had missed out, if he had made a mistake, we would have been at 1.4. So we've done very well as far as checking with this contractor and feeling that the number is correct.
Have we worked with this construction company before?
I haven't, but DLA has. Ryan, do you want to step in and say something about that?
Hi. Good evening. Yeah, we've worked with Tandem Construction on a couple of different projects. They're engaged in quite a bit of public school work currently, so we've had some very good experience and successful project completion with them. So we did an extensive scope review, as Ramesh mentioned, and we feel very confident about their ability to complete this project.
Thank you.
Well, Dan, to your point, there were 4 bids, and the bids range from this $1,050,000 all the way up to almost $1,800,000. So Ramesh's estimate was where it should be in terms of where estimates are expected to be, which is in about the middle. So this, as he noted, this could have been much higher. We got a good contractor. The contractor wants the work. They've been vetted by DLA and Ramesh. Right now, things look good.
Okay, I definitely agree. All right, is there any further discussion?
No, thank you, Ramesh, for all the extra work. I know none of us anticipated this project, but you've done well responding to a strange, phenomenon which happens with these historic buildings. But I wish we found it sooner, obviously. But I'm really grateful that it's taken care of this summer. So.
We have a great architect too. So.
Yeah, and thank you, Ryan, and the rest. Yeah.
All right. Kathy, can you call the roll?
Mrs. Piper,
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi,
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Murhol,
Aye.
Mr. Hunt.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Hollywood Edition Play Lot Construction Project Bid Approval. At this time, is there a motion the Board of Education approve Vistara's recommendation for the following multi-part project award? Bid base A, construction of a 1,450 square foot multi-purpose room addition for $3,003,003. Base bid 2, removal of existing playground and the construction of a new playground and play structure site work, $292,000. Provide operable windows at the multi-purpose room, $16,000. Total award recommendation of $1.6 million, $11,000. To Apex Construction Group of Chicago. The projected budget for this project was $1.8 million.
So moved.
Second? Oh, Jesus. I did both.
Doesn't roll right off the tongue, does it?
Yeah.
All right, is there any discussion?
So, on this project, if you recall, The previous number, which Berglund had presented as part of the contract last year, was $1.2 million for the multipurpose room. And when we did not award that contract, at that time itself, I said that we would pay more if we bid it separately this year. Now, considering, once again, going back to my statement that we're in a very strange construction market this year, I think we've done extremely well to get that number only less than 10% higher, number one. Number two is our playground has come in almost a third less because we had projected about 400,000. It's come in at 290,000, substantially less than what we had predicted. The overall cost for the project, including the alternate, which is for the operable windows that the board had requested, is an extremely favorable number. The number cannot be guaranteed next year. Let's put it this way. It will never be cheaper. I mean, we are always in an escalating market. It's 3 or 4% each year that we may end up paying more for. Now, once again, this is a very good contractor that we've gotten the numbers from. We got as many as 6 bids. They grouped very well. It rises right where we wanted the numbers to be. And I think, once again, it's a good contractor, good experienced school work that they've done before. And I think we should move towards awarding the contract.
Any other discussion?
We discussed, the facilities agrees with Ramesh. We discussed it extensively, and we do, the bids are appropriate, and we did, as you know, defer this project because of the discussions at Hollywood. And this does, we did reduce the scope of the playground to narrow its focus a little bit, which we think was good and effective and gets Hollywood to where it needs to be in terms of a playground space. We also want to take advantage of the agreement with Hollywood House. It was long discussions to get to where we're at, and this space will be good for the school. It certainly won't need any more for a long, long time, if ever. The Facilities Committee is very supportive of this.
Yeah, this
If
recommendation.
Linda wants to have other words.
Yeah, no, Joel and I are both part of the Facilities Committee, and we had a meeting with Ramesh, and we came out of the committee both recommending this, this award, so, yeah. I think some of the board's main concern was the budget, and would it be coming in budget, and it's under budget. It's not, in a perfect world, this project would already be done last year with the cheaper bid that we had last year, but it's not a perfect world, but this is as good of a place as we could have hoped for. So I know I support the project, but happy to have more discussion if needed.
Well, and bring it back to, from facilities to, from a more just long individual perspective, you know that I was not always quite sure about this, but I've thought about it and looked at the floor plans that Kim has provided, and I can see where the space is needed, it justified. I think that we will be, personally, I believe that the district will be under a certain amount of obligation to try and give the community some access to that space. Not for free, but I think we can make better arrangements to leverage it more for the benefit of Hollywood.
Right, and the projected estimates for this project were 1.5 plus 400,000, so 1.9. So we've done substantially less than that at 1,611,000.
The other thing that Mr. Fitton had provided in this packet is, I know, we couldn't do this project, then the pandemic hits, we're worried about finances, obviously, but I don't know if Jim wants to speak to it, but he provided a memo in the packet that's publicly, that our FY21 is ending much more favorably than we had anticipated. So I don't know if Jim, did you want to mention it at all, or if somebody, I don't want to misspeak, but it's been just,
We did have savings from our contingency from last year. So the projected budgets that we had last year, we managed to transfer some monies over to this year in the neighborhood of 350 to 400,000.
I think for me, of course, finances is always a consideration, and I still in the future would, love for Mr. Fitton to provide those, long-range pictures that will show what else is needed at the other schools. Is really valuable. At this time, though, having a flexible space that really is going to be invaluable, I think, next year, especially when we might need to space out more children, and we don't actually know what's going to be happening, I think is valuable. And just hearing from the staff and the families, I think it's crucial that there is equity in the schools about how the spaces get used, and for teaching, that we have a reasonable space and some flexibility. So I personally am in favor of it at this time. I wish we could have bundled more at this time, of course, but with all that we dealt with last year, this is, I think, a reasonable solution for now. So.
Given what Ramesh has said about the budget and Joel and Linda's comments and the other comments, I agree. This is, given where we're at right now, given what we planned, given what we sort of told the community over the last couple of years, I don't think we could realistically not say no to this now. So I think I do support it. But I would add a caveat, which is that one of the main goals here of the board is to ensure parity between the schools, and that's actually explicitly in one of our guidelines for the facilities planning. And so I see on the facilities agenda that fits in the board book here that you did talk about Blythe Park for some adding space or reconfiguring space of Blythe Park, and that's on the agenda starting in the fall. And I think it's key to do that because if you think about right now, in our plan to sort of make Blythe a 2 full section school, we have about 9 classes at Blythe Park. We have 9 grades. Everything up through 2nd grade is 2, and then from 3, 4, and 5 is another 1 each. And there are a total of 12 classrooms at Blythe. So if you look at the number of classrooms per sort of grouping of grades, it's 1 1/3, which is exactly the same as what Hollywood is right now. Hollywood's got 8 classes and 6 sections. So just on that rough metric, Blythe is on parity with Hollywood right now. But over the next 2 years, we're really at that, ready for next year, we're almost at, ready at another section with grade 3. So within 2 years, we're going to have 12 groupings or classes at Blythe. We only have 12 classrooms, which is 1-to-1, which is like 50% less than what Blythe will be at 1.5 if you include the multi-purpose room. So I think and that's really not tenable actually. And I think Blythe Park was always the linchpin of our plan. The fact that Blythe Park was underutilized allowed us to transfer students from Central, and then some students, from the LADSI program to Central. It allows us to maintain Central at 3 sections, allows us to make Ames at 3 sections very comfortably. So Blythe Park has always been the linchpin of our plan because it was highly underutilized. Now it's going to be a full 2-section school. It's going to be great for Blythe Park because 2 sections is, you get twice as many students, you get a much more dynamic environment. No offense to Hollywood, which has its own, own virtues, but I think there's a lot to be said for 2 sections and 2 full sections rather than 1.5 section because, in the past it was, at some points in the past it was, 1.5, and that creates a very unstable environment because it's always different grades that are moving through and they have different turnover of the teachers. I think that's also not ideal. So I guess for me, since we're only 2 years away, realistically, if you count we're somewhere at the time we're assigning the 3rd graders, we're really only 2 years away from the point at which Blythe Park is 2 full sections, 2.5 years. So so it seems to me that we need to do something there relatively quickly. This isn't a long, and given how long it takes to do things, I really do think this has to be on the front burner. This has to be done and done quickly. And not overnight, but it really, because otherwise we're going to be a situation where either we're bursting at the seams there, or We don't go to the full 2 sections, which I think is a very, very bad move. And so I do think that, this puts the impetus on us to really push the Blythe projects forward. So those are my 2 cents on this.
I think from a teacher's perspective, having 2 sections it's just so different and invaluable having another coworker to bounce ideas off of and having someone to collaborate with. And sometimes you're the only one, and that's okay, but it is valuable. I still would really ask in the future, in the next 2 years, that we have a bigger long-term picture of what that's going to cost, along with the central projects for the playground. And I think I personally need a bigger picture for those things to really analyze how are we going to manage the bundle and how are we going to pay for that long-term. So I totally agree with you, but I think we need both hand in hand as function and then how are we going to manage.
Yeah, and I think that is the plan, is that this summer's construction ends and immediately it's starting to plan for the next phase, which I've always, personally always knew, and that Blythe project is coming. And it's, unfortunately we had this year where we couldn't really do things, but you're right, it's of most importance, absolutely.
I mean, is it possible to even start, given the time lags involved, to have had the facilities committee start even talking about that, sooner rather than later, just to get some ideas floating out there, and you're thinking about it in the back of your mind as opposed to waiting until the fall. I think, I don't know.
I'll just interrupt. We've already reached out to DLA just to come and begin to sort of brainstorm ideas. I know, one of the ideas had been the modification of the auditorium, but are there other ideas out there that, again, somebody like our DLA architects who have really come to know our buildings really well and understand the historic issues, et cetera. So we'll begin that brainstorming process yet this spring. As you said, we know that these projects take a long time, and I think it's been sitting there kind of percolating as an idea, and I think coming to some resolution about the current projects, the current goals, will really help us then figure out what that next step is. And the way I see it, it's Blythe and it's the central Hauser outdoors that we've talked about also quite a bit, and would love to figure out how to get that to a plan that we can implement.
Right.
And just to add just one more comment, just that in those two different projects, the Hauser Central and Blythe, I think, well, obviously the central playground is very important because we can't have every other school has a nice playground except for Central, so we sort of have to do that. But then you weigh the Hauser Outdoor, which is going to be or Hauser Outdoor sort of artificial turf field, which is going to be very expensive, versus the Blythe Park, making that a full 2-section school, which I think is totally doable based on rearranging the auditorium and all that. I do think the Blythe Park is like way more important because again, that school is like we're on a tight timeline there. 2 years until it really is full 2 sections. So I really think like that to me. And again, my opinion is not going to matter tonight, but to me, that's where I would put my emphasis.
I think it's also possible to do both projects. I think that's also
If
very.
you can do both, that's fine.
I think the Jeff Miller legacy will
You're not going to hear from me, I assure you.
We'll hear your voice in the yes.
But please note, your comments right now are duly noted and completely agree. I concur with them completely.
And I'll just say, Jeff, I remember the early comments. It was we were trying to sort of quantitatively figure this out and think about the sectioning. And I think it was really your vision that said, I think Blythe needs to be a 2-section school and 9 sections at each grade level throughout as this predictable pattern. And yes, there are likely to be some bumps and glitches here along the way because enrollment isn't entirely predictable. But thank you for bringing a lot of precision of thought and wonderful ideas. So I'm, absolutely, I think Blythe and I think the improvements to Central Hauser seem like they're both within our reach as possibilities, and I look forward to working with DLA and figuring out how to move these pieces forward.
All right, any more discussion?
I did have a question. So I know that one of the things we've broken out here are windows, opening them rather than having them sealed, and I wonder if we could speak to, or the board could hear a little bit more reflection on the pros and cons of each choice there.
Operable windows have been the trend of late in the sense that you want to get ventilation going, natural ventilation, rather than conditioned air. And especially after the pandemic, where we want to have additional air changes from outside, this makes total sense because it's much harder to replace the windows post-construction. It's a good option to take it on right now to come up with operable windows. And I think Joel had mentioned this during one of our facilities committee meetings, that why don't we seek out an alternate cost? And the number fell right in our wheelhouse when we got it for $16,000. It's a great option, and I think we should implement it.
After this year, I think we should do it.
Yeah, and I just think in general, even before pandemic, I think fresh air and hearing birds and bringing it, we live in an arboretum with nature. I think it's not a bad thing to bring a little bit of that in, and you can close them when you don't need them. So, you know, it makes sense to me, especially with pandemic, so.
To add on to what Ramesh said, a lot of, and Ryan can either nod his head yes or no after I'm done, but energy codes and design has been very focused on energy efficiency,
Yeah.
which meant no opening windows. We want the mechanicals to deal with our air to keep it hot or cold. And that was where the trend was. There was a little bit of a trend starting to lean away from that towards more of a natural airflow situation, but the pandemic has really brought it more front and center and brought it much more to the forefront than it probably would have been otherwise.
You're right, actually, operable windows are the cheapest option. You can obviously have mechanical equipment that does the same thing for you, in the sense that it takes in more outside air, but those are more expensive to accomplish, and for a larger project, maybe it makes sense, but for a project of this size, operable windows are cheapest, most efficient way.
I think I know, given the age of the school, that I would imagine the rest of the windows in Hollywood are operable currently.
Yes. Am I correct, Ryan?
I don't know if you heard you.
Ryan, you're on mute.
The existing windows they are.
I would agree with what you said, Joel. I think that, yes, the reason for doing the fix is definitely energy efficiency, controlling that climate, changing more outside air does come at a premium. So given the size of the building, operable windows would be the least expensive way to achieve that.
Thank you.
I think that's the question. Sorry.
And Martha, I think you mentioned in the past that the additional expense that's listed here, I think 16,000, could be a candidate for reimbursement through the federal coronavirus.
Right, so we believe
programs.
we could put that extra money, which wasn't really anticipated in the project, but really because of the pandemic, I think it came back as the more popular idea. But we believe that it could be eligible for what we're calling our ESSERS reimbursement, so our economic stimulus money through the federal government, just to carve that piece of the project out.
Softball. So I wrote down earlier, you said 1.2 million was the NPR bid for last year, and it's 1.3. I couldn't find the actual bids from last year. What was the what of the 1.6, like how much more is that from total cost of what we would have had last year? Is it still just roughly 10?
So last year's project, if you recall, was a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price for all 4 projects together. We had asked Berglund to break it out for accounting purposes, and they gave us the $1.2 million number.
Oh, the 1.2 is for the playground as well?
No, it
No,
didn't
that was
include the
just,
playground. It
okay.
was just for the
Oh, we never got a bid on the playground, did we? 'Cause
No, we
never
did
went
not.
forward. That's right, okay.
We didn't have a place to
Yeah,
put a
right.
playground because of the time it took to talk to.
To reach the
Right.
agreement with the Hollywood Community Association, yes.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Okay. I didn't forget about that. I forgot we didn't get to the bidding part of the
I'm
playground.
glad you asked the question. I was wondering the same thing, so yeah, I mean, that does make sense now. We
Yeah,
never got a bid for
you had
the-
mentioned it was a third less, but it was a third less than what our estimate was, not,
That's correct.
because we had no prior numbers. Okay, thank you.
Right.
So it is still essentially for the multipurpose room is roughly 100,000 more than it would have been a year ago,
Yeah,
given where we were at and where the length of time it took to reach that agreement.
right.
I know. It's far better than what we were originally quoting, but
Yeah.
$100,000 more, I mean, is still just, again, I mean, I don't think we should be paying the $100,000 more. I mean, I think we should pass that bill on to the HCA for them dragging their feet. I know we can't do that, but, and we could try. But I mean,
We're not going to try
I just don't, I mean, we have to do this project, but it's just, we saved we went about this, it took a long time, this could have been done, the kids could have been at a nicer school right now, a nicer playground, the community could have a nicer playground, but all but for the HCA.
For the record, I have to state one thing too, that when I went to school, in elementary school, we ate lunch in the gym, and it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of people say that it's unsanitary. It's not nice. I would question the unsanitary part about it. I mean, but I mean, that's not something, I don't know what backs that up. And so.
Mm.
I feel lucky I was in California, we ate outside. So I feel a little bit lucky that we had that experience.
You are lucky, yeah.
There's also this movement in architecture, which has been around for 20 years, I'm sure Ryan knows about it, in residential architecture, about making houses not bigger but smaller, like the not so big house kind of idea. And the way that's done typically is you to make the house smaller, but still have the same functionality, some rooms have to do double duty, some rooms have to do 2 functions or more. And so I do think the idea of using rooms for multiple reasons is a good thing in general. It allows us to use space efficiently. So I don't think that's a bad thing at all, actually. So to your point, I agree.
I would agree with that. If you look at some of the new spaces at Ames and Central, they are multi-purpose. They're designed for flexibility. So finding that within a space is what allows it to be bigger than it's designed.
And I think everyone recalls, this will also be our music classroom, and then it's an opportunity for large groups to convene. And yes, it's a place to eat lunch. But I think, absolutely, I think, Sherry, you said it, the pandemic has made us value flexibility of space more than ever before.
Especially when we've all been doing it in our homes all year.
Yeah.
This is our new office at this table.
Multi-purpose,
So,
absolutely.
I think we should.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All right. Kathy, can you call the roll?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So are we voting on the whole project?
Yes, that's good to clarify that. Yes, as the motion stands right now, we are voting on the entire project, meaning the multipurpose room, the playground, so multipurpose room for 1.3,003,000, the playground for 292,000, and operable windows for 16,000, for a total of 1.6 million 11,000. So yes, thanks for asking me to clarify that. So yes, at this time we're voting on the entirety of the project. If I believe, is that
Yes, that's
we
the
would like
motion
to
on the
move?
floor. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Kathy, go ahead.
Okay. Mrs. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Marhol?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mrs. Piper?
Hi.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the official school calendar. At this time, is there a motion that the Board of Education approve the 2021-2022 official school calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
This is the same calendar we saw 2 weeks ago at the.
Same calendar you saw
Okay.
2 weeks ago. It does, I think their one calendar on our website had a different proposed first day of school, but we've now resolved that. So this, and I will put this out for parents tomorrow too, and it will go up on our website as
I
well.
believe that was August 25th, is that correct?
Yes, first day of students and staff coming back on the 23rd and 24th for Institute Day.
Right.
So I do have just one question. Given sort of that we've done remote for so long, I understand that we've done always conditional emergency days. Are we ever going to really need emergency days going forward?
The State Board of Ed still requires you to put them in there. I know there's a lot of chatter about we should still give kids snow days and days to play out in the
There's
snow
also
and that kind of thing.
days with no power. That's happened.
Yeah, days with no
Maybe
power,
just
yeah.
do your
You know,
remote.
which
yeah.
would really ruin remote learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, no, that's exactly
We'll
true.
keep them there.
I think we
I-
had
yeah.
heating, we had a day out for no heat or like lack of, it was really cold. So that potentially could still be.
We had an
an issue.
emergency day once for flooding as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
the electricity flow.
So I do think there are, like,
Okay.
I hope we don't have them.
I hope
Yeah.
we don't either.
Yeah.
But having delayed our start this year more towards after Labor Day, it should feel more normal since it's the last week of
Right.
August, so.
And as you know, this year's last day is June 10th. That starts to feel really late, I think,
Yeah.
for families and for staff. So we wanted to, even though we were very sensitive to the Central Fire Protection Project specifically, we had a number of conversations with Ramesh, and once we knew the bids were in and the timelines were clear, we feel comfortable with this date, and it's just a better match with the other school districts around us, and we're always a little later than RB, but it's hard. I know we have sometimes families that have children at both, so we didn't want there to be too much space between the start dates there.
Oh, if you want to open it up.
Okay. Any additional discussion? All right, Kathy, can you call the roll?
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi,
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Marhol,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleiber,
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead,
Aye.
and Mr. Hunt.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, the next item is Hauser's late start time, proposed action item. Is there a motion the Board of Education approve the start time for Hauser to 8:30 a.m. to 3:35 p.m. for the 2021-2022 school year as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Can we name this like, in Jeff's legacy? I feel like it's a legacy
Although
meeting right now.
I wonder if he would have wanted it
Or
later.
start time or late start time?
It's like the,
For 9 o'clock, right?
That's what I was saying.
right, okay, forget
See,
it.
I was right, I knew he would
Forget
wanted
it.
it later, yeah.
Name after Jeff when we get to 9.
We'll keep you posted.
And I believe actually start time of the schools may have changed other times. It doesn't necessarily require board action, but the board does have governance over the school day, and I just felt that this, sort of married well with the school calendar, and I think it is important because it is a shift for the community. It is something I know this board expressed some desire to see happen as it related to the adolescent sleep research. And again, what I think Sherry had just shared a little bit ago is we were doing this because of the pandemic and because of the scheduling, and it didn't take long for April May and Chris Harbalis to point out to us that all of a sudden there just tardies have not been an issue this year. So it just seems something that makes a lot of sense to do. So that's why it is here for board action.
All right, is there any further discussion?
No.
All right, Kathy, can you call the roll?
Okay. Mrs. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi,
Aye.
Mr. Marhol,
Aye.
Mrs. Kleiber,
Aye.
and Mr. Hunt.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, which brings us to new business. The first item under new business is the strategic planning update, the final plan approval, not to be voted on tonight, but to be discussed and presented. All right, not sure what that was.
Maybe some of our Zoom
time's
participants
up.
signing off.
Oh, the Zoom.
Okay. So let's see. So the first item, pulling up here.
There's quite a bit of detail here
Mhm.
about the strategic plan. I just thought, I know Wesley and Dan, you both have, certainly I appreciate the two of you participating. It's exciting that we brought this to close, which is really just beginning of the plan, but it's been a great process. We've had 35 members participating over, what was it, 12 different sessions, 2 hours on Zoom since December 15th. And again, I've just been so appreciative of the level of engagement of our parents, the two of you as board members, our staff members. We had a number of students also from Riverside Brookfield High School join us. So it was really a great process, and I know we had questions, could we really do this in the midst of the pandemic, and would we lose something by doing it virtually? And I just, I'm really, really excited about the level of engagement and really excited about the direction that the plan is taking, and certainly want opportunity for the board to digest and ask questions. And this is kind of hot off the presses, so it's something that we can take, you know, if we want to take May Committee of the Whole and May Board to talk about it more. It's big. The board ultimately does have the responsibility to approve it, and I know you're kind of just seeing parts of it, but you've been hearing about it along the way, so I wanted to share it.
Let me go, Dave.
Might make sense to, I know that our next meeting is supposed to be the shortest meeting of the 2 years. Maybe it would make sense to talk about it a little more, maybe have it visual to present to the public in terms of, you know, the values that we're listing and the goals that we're stating.
Right.
I know I can see them here, but.
Right. The other thing I've wondered is, you know, there are things that really fall within each committee in terms of education, finance, facilities, personnel. If we'd want to somehow parcel out sections, even though I know not everybody was on the planning team, with the opportunity to take a look at the plan, and I'd be happy to check in with each committee chair or chairs and kind of go over that and think about sharing it in that way. I think there's some very significant pieces here that I want to make sure that obviously the board has a comfort level and full knowledge, and then also that the community does.
Right, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I know, even though I wasn't on the planning committee this time, I'm looking at the student growth and achievement goals, and they're exactly what, you know, when we first brought on Angela, our director of teaching and learning, exactly what we were talking about, and even the last strategic planning about equity for subgroups, achievement for every child, working on, you know, do we consider all-day kindergarten? All these things are not by any means a surprise, and so I think it'd be perfectly fine to have that. I know the other chairs feel, but I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it was actually, I haven't had a chance to talk with either Martha or Dan about this, but just like my own personal reflections about it, I was thinking of like dedicating a good chunk of time at a Cal meeting would probably be good. There's
I agree.
20, I think it was this one labeled many exclamation points, Riverside SP Land.
I thought that
came first. And then
when I saw it, I was like, that's the one I should open first.
So that was the intent there, I'm guessing.
That's not my labeling either. That's from CEC. I'm not sure.
Oh,
what
really?
that's- yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they're excited.
I thought it was like a note.
I thought it was a
Like,
note to
look.
us.
But I think that was like a 28-page slide or something, which goes
Yeah.
through the different sections of the plan, but then also goes into the detail of the process. So I don't know that we need to go through the whole thing, because we've given some of the details of like,
Agreed.
as we were going, but I think really going through the plan as Martha suggested, and then tying that, so from a board perspective, tying that to which committee will be responsible for what. Like the next step is going to be what exactly are the specific goals,
Yeah.
and then the committees are going to have to own those, and then on the other side, like how do you execute that within the schools themselves, and in the different factions there. So I think it's taking some time just to kind of kick that around a little bit and make sure that we've got everything that we need as a district and our long-term vision kind of wrapped up in here, and it makes sense. I don't think we can do, I mean, we can theoretically do whatever we want. I don't think it would be smart to make any large changes, but we could still make little minor tweaks or fill in gaps and things like that before we final approve it. And then I think the other thing too is, and I know we haven't had one of our whatever we call it, self-reflection exercises because of everything going on, but just kind of thinking back to the last one we did, kind of setting a cyclical calendar to check in on this, and so everybody kind of knows on these dates, at these times, these are the people that are going to present the information that's there, just to try to keep ourselves from letting this thing slip away, because as Perry told us, I think at every single meeting, if you stick it on a shelf, it's not going to work. So you got to make sure you got some actions in place. So I think doing that at the Cal.
When do those specific measurable goals get developed? Because that's
after
not.
we approve the plan.
Okay, that's
and then,
right.
So yeah, so that
That's what I
really
was-
ties into what do we need to accomplish this year. So
Okay.
this is the big picture for 5 years, and then every single year it's okay within this column. What are the specific things
Okay.
we want to achieve? So facilities wise, this year is going to be the Hollywood. Next year will be Central Hauser, or the year after that would be. And so those goals change, but the broader umbrella stays the same for the duration.
I like your idea though of doing like a condensed look next, because it is overwhelmingly large,
a lot.
and then we can piece it out. That seems more, I think, easier for the public to understand and for us. who aren't on the committee every day, so I think that's good.
And really the launch of it is really to start the new school year with
Yeah.
a new
Yeah.
plan in place. And so I know there's, I certainly feel an eagerness. I'm very excited about the plan. I'm excited about the work that the committee did together. But I know the May 4th meeting is the board reorganization. If we want to keep it just as that, we could certainly, move this on into May board and even June cow. There's no real requirement on us. This is our draft plan. I want the board to have the time and the opportunity to really digest it, absorb it, ask questions, put context and rationale to the big ideas that are in the plan. Happy to do whatever I can to kind of just bridge those conversations. I know Dan and Wesley also, I'm sure, are. So, if we want to think about the best times or the best ways, I do think a cow meeting might be good and kind of take it by committee, because I think there's some.
I do think that's a great idea, and it would allow folks on those individual committees, I think, as you were mentioning, to focus in, figure out what is stating in the plan that's relevant to their committee, how are they going to incorporate those goals, and how do we move towards meeting them. I think that's an excellent idea.
And
It
for
makes a lot of
I
sense.
totally think that's perfect what you're saying, and like for the new board member as well, it'd be a perfect way for them to be acclimated in a more detailed way and to hear about that rather than just reading a document. Yeah.
And kind of to your point, Sherry, I think there is a lot in here that is similar, and so some people might be saying, well, why do you have the same stuff in this plan? Well, some of it is just core mission and just
Yeah.
getting better at it, but
Right.
I think one of the pieces of feedback we got was, I think it was something, I'm going to get the quote wrong, but it was like, the last plan had evaluate full day kindergarten. This plan should be, we're going to do it. And it's like, well, we're not ready to do it, so we can't say we're going to do it, because then if we don't, then we're right. So, but it's kind of tackling those things, like, why did we not get it accomplished? Is it so? And then by the committee level, like, what do we need to do to enact some of these things? So, and then the other comment I was going to make is it's to do that in a cow meeting, I think, is good as well, because it's not just a community thing. It's not just parents we're talking to. It's also staff, and to like making sure all stakeholders have that weren't in the committee, because it was 35 of us or whatever, but then having that more public conversation, so to speak, which hopefully we'll get some natural feedback through different mechanisms as well.
So do you think the more appropriate cow meeting would be the June cow then, and wait till after the reorganization?
So would it be, oh yeah, because the May one.
Right.
is,
Actually, that makes a lot of sense, because at that point we have some folks probably moving around from committee to committee. We'll have a new board member as well.
Yeah, geez. God, it's hard to think we're in May already.
So it'd be June cow. But I think that's fine. Again, I think
Yeah,
we
we'll have the
have
summer in front of us.
Yeah.
And I think, looking over it, it's not like any of us are gonna come in with like, oh, we gotta rework all, it's a really good plan, so I don't think it's a matter of like, there's not like work to do on it. You've already done the work, it's just kind of like going through it publicly together.
Yep.
Making
Understanding
sure we're
it,
tying
wordsmithing
everything.
it. Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think June is a problem.
I think it's fine, and you might get a few more public comment from people that hadn't read it, or, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
to get more feedback.
I don't think we should do it at the organization meeting.
No, that's weird, a little bit strange, I think.
All right, thanks.
All
That
right,
helps.
sounds like we have a plan.
Right.
We have a plan for our plan. Couldn't resist. Dad joke. All right.
I got it, Dan. I got it.
Thank you, Dave. All right. Next item for discussion, the Hauser graduation, June 2021.
So I can share a little bit here. So the board doesn't typically, again, take action. It doesn't really require action, but again, because of the pandemic, there's been a lot of careful consideration to, can we have a graduation celebration? How can we safely have a graduation celebration? And I know April May and Chris Harvalis put a lot of time and attention and consideration into this. So as you see, the idea is to have an outdoor graduation at the stadium at Riverside Brookfield High School, to still limit attendance to some degree. Also, to not have an indoor alternative, really to move it to a rain date, which is the Saturday that's listed just after. Saturday, June 5th would be the rain date, also at 10 o'clock at the RV Stadium. It sounds very safe, given with where the virus is now. I think if the virus were to get a lot worse, we also know that there would be limitations put on gatherings and that kind of thing. So this would be our plan for now, but given the safety issues that are involved. I just wanted to make sure that the board had a comfort level with it, or not. If you don't, I think it's just important that we discuss that here, and that we would, make a different plan.
I do have one question. I noticed, I didn't see anything. How are they going to distribute the diplomas this year? Or how do they plan to distribute? Is it going to be the traditional way where they go up on the stage?
Yeah, so I think that would, again, I'm sure April and Chris have thought of some of those logistics. I think we're fine with the shared, I think what we've demonstrated is if everyone has clean hands, you can,
Right.
share
Just hand it.
a thing.
Yeah.
Probably not shaking a bunch of hands.
Yeah, we wouldn't be
Yeah,
handshaking,
Well,
right?
It's not so
I
much about
think it's
touching
been-
as it is inhaling. and-
Right. No, I just, right.
I think it's been demonstrated that the chance of passing coronavirus via touch as opposed to air is fairly minuscule.
It's probably just a matter of how close you are for how long. And
Correct, yes.
Managing that.
No, I think this is a great option.
Yeah.
There is a lot of space at that stadium at RB. Even if you wanted to go to the other bleachers or move to the other sides, there's a lot of space to feel comfortable, even if you don't want to sit in the stands next to other people. And everybody will be masked, obviously. I think it's great. I'm really excited to hear that these end of year celebration, these milestones are going to be celebrated in a safe fashion. So I appreciate this. I'm glad that Chris and April are doing this.
And I assume it'd be optional as well. If somebody individually wasn't comfortable, they don't have to show up.
Right. As a matter of fact, I think I just read an article about S.E. Gross's Brookfield, our neighboring districts, and they were clear. If you don't want to participate, you do not have
Yeah.
to. Nobody would have to. So we can certainly make note of that. I think it's kind of implied, but
Yeah.
we can be more explicit about that.
I've been to events at the stadium as of late with sporting, and there's a lot of space there. And just even at last watching the band be able to completely separate on the track and be so far away from each other. There's so much space if you include the field, the track. It's just.
Yeah, it's just the outdoor ventilation. I think
Yeah.
I've read somewhere that there's been no documented case of outdoor transmission basically ever.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, it goes back to the aerosols, it's so diluted outside that
Yeah.
the risks are extremely minimal.
Yeah, and I've noticed that people are following the mask mandates at events at the stadium already. So that's.
So it
not
would be
been a problem.
outdoor, socially distanced, and mask wearing. So I think we've really hit on the
Yeah.
key targets
I
there.
would maybe say you may want to consider for those that we do have a small population of students that are like fully remote for other health reasons and things, that we still make their graduation special and
Yeah.
don't forget to honor them in a separate way. So I'm sure they'll figure that out, but just so they don't feel left out.
Apparently, we have a good number that showed up for IAR testing, so I'm encouraged that maybe, some will be comfortable coming to events, but absolutely, we'll make sure. And I know last year, there were a lot of efforts to make sure that there was a sense of celebration for the 8th grade graduates last year, so, but another good point, we'll make sure
And
of
you
that.
said, this note says it'll be Facebook Live too, so
Yeah.
obviously every student's going to be honored, whether they are present or not, just
Right.
as always, so, yeah.
Does that scoreboard allow video?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, there is no video screen, but yeah.
Maybe they could put up a photo of that particular
Well, so I'm sure they're
child.
happy to take donations.
Person with Melbourne Plunge just for that.
We actually looked into Riverside TV, we looked into RB has their own, I think, studio to do it, and it just didn't work out, so we ended up with Facebook Live as our best option.
That's great.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
So again, no action required, this is new business anyway. I can bring it back for action item. By the time I bring it back, obviously planning has to be pretty well underway. So in communication with family. So I just, again, wanted to get a read for if there was a disagreement or a
No.
discomfort.
Anyone in disagreement? Anyone had concerns? Yeah,
Move forward, move
Yeah,
forward.
I think we're good to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item is the co-curricular overview.
And I can take that one as well. So this year, we did modify, if you recall in normal times, we bring co-curricular proposals to the Board of Education in the spring or early summer to approve them for the following school year. This year, we did make a modification through a memorandum of understanding, actually with the teachers union, that the proposals would come directly to me and I would approve them. Partially because as an efficiency, and we knew we were working sort of under budget in this area, that we weren't going to be able to offer the full array of programs that we typically do. But since, things have shifted and changed, and people have gained comfort in understanding what the protocols are that really do seem to be those preventative protocols, we've been able to offer a number of activities for our students. I know that was something that the board was really invested in when we set our goals earlier, was, what opportunities are there for students when so many other opportunities are being shut down. So I think our teachers have done a really great job of finding some creative ways to still bring children together in ways that feel safe, socially distanced, and really meet our COVID mitigation strategies. So what you have here is an overview, and I think you have a note here from Jim at the top that speaks to kind of where we are in terms of the under budget nature of our co-curriculars. But we have been able to run a number of these successfully, and some are still yet to come up here in the spring, and relying on warmer and nicer weather to do some of them. So I wanted you to be aware, again, not board action not required, but again, because it's an area that the board typically does take action on, again, wanted to bring it all to your attention. Are there any questions about it or concerns? No. I'm glad we've been able to find some opportunities, both because our staff, I think for them it's a real passion, and it's a way that they really connect with children outside of the classroom, and for our children obviously to participate in these activities.
Yeah.
Probably too early to ask about next year's, but I assume next year's we'll be able to do more. It's really hard to say at this point, but I'm just speculating.
Right, it is hard to say for sure, but I think, one, we've learned through these activities, and, I think people that had one kind of activity that maybe didn't feel quite as safe or required kids to congregate too much, made some shifts and changes. So, I think that's a good point. We'll probably plan to follow our protocol, which would be by spring. Teachers would propose for the coming year. The board would have an opportunity to take a look at them. We actually review them in a committee prior to bringing them to the board, and we can plan as if normal. And if something would need to be modified because of COVID, we could do that.
All right. So we'll move on to public comment.
There's no additional.
No additional public comment? Okay. And that brings us to future meeting dates. Next meeting will be May 4th, 2021, is the biennial organizational meeting, 7 p.m. in the Ames Multipurpose Room. Please note the date change. This meeting will be held on a Tuesday. Next meeting will be May 19th, 2021, regular business meeting, 7 p.m. in the Ames Multipurpose Room. The board will enter into closed session at 6:30 p.m. if necessary, and return to open session at 7 p.m. And if there is nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.